UFX LOFI and Distort by UJAM can turn even the simplest of sounds into expressive, character-rich textures. These plugins follow UJAM's philosophy for UFX. Fast, inspiring, high-quality sound design with 20 distinct modes in each, creative presets, and powerful filter and finisher sections. To demonstrate this, I built 3 tracks: a lo-fi beat, a weird little garage track, and a synthwave track. Let's start with UFX LOFI. Take a listen to this beat, and then we'll dive into the plugin. I used UFX LOFI on nearly every part of that beat. Here are the drums before and after. I'm in the downsample mode, which is just one of the flavors of lo-fi that we can tap into here. And I've also got the mix dialed down pretty low. If I start to bring that up, the effect becomes more dramatic. For certain styles, I like to just leave it low and add just a little of that subtle ring on top. Oh look, the preset is called Subtle Ring. Here's the piano before. And then with UFX LOFI, we get that crunchiness because we're in tape saturation mode. I noted about this mix slider earlier, but we also have shape, and we can use Degrade to adjust the depth of the selected mode. Of course, drive is going to add an extra layer of dirt. That's probably way too much, right? Let's bring that down. And then slam is a really aggressive compressor. I've got noise right here, which can be just noise happening on top of everything, or it can be gated. So it only happens when there's actual sound coming from the instrument. In the full context of the track, I also added UFX reverb on top to create that extra space. Now listen to the vocal sample before. I don't think this makes much sense in the context of the track at all, but we turn on lo-fi. That works a lot better, and I think it's because of the mode. We're in broken speaker mode. Then also over here on the filter side, we're using the radio effect. The filter could be just a basic high cut or a low pass filter, but we've also got these sort of characteristic radio, telephone, megaphone sounds that give me that perfect, I guess, radio-esque sound. And then on top of that, in the finisher, I've got Space Infinite, a very big spacey reverb, which makes this sound both lo-fi and spacey, 2 of my favorite aspects of this kind of music. But to really drive home the point that we don't have to just use this in the lo-fi genre, let's listen to another track. This track, I'm also using UFX LOFI on the drums. Here's what it sounded like before and after. This time we're using a pretty creative mode called granular glitch, which is adding this sort of wideness and these little granules, plus adding that lo-fi grid. I could just bring up the degrade and the drive to really make it extreme. Then also over here on the tweak side, I'm not dialing in any noise this time, but I've got the frequency dialed up. And across the different modes, it can mean different things. In this case, I believe it's affecting our sample rate. And we've got a vocal sample here where the dramatic difference with the UFX Lo-Fi version. Finally, I've got to show off this bass line before. Fine, just basic with lo-fi. It's got the grit that we need and a little bit of space from the large chamber finisher. We've got a tube filter in addition to our wow mode here to give us that little pitch modulation. Here, the frequency knob is really going to exaggerate that pitch modulation, so we'll keep that slightly low, especially for this bass line. I also want to note, we've got the highlighter here, which can either be a high pass filter or a low pass filter when turned to the left. Finally, I'll just note that I've got UFX Lo-Fi in the tape saturation mode on the overall track. Here's before and after. Gain adjusted a little bit. Before, after. Subtle bit more warmth and just a bit of noise on top. As you can see, Distort looks pretty similar. So let's listen to a track where I use it in context and then we'll talk about it. First of all, we gotta hear that guitar before and after. A really great sound. So just like UFX Lo-Fi, UFX Distort has different modes as well. For guitar, we're in the guitar amp mode. We have a similar shape section over here with drive, slam, that compressor, and the ability to adjust the gain after our effects. We've got tone shaping and then also a speaker section. Since this is a guitar sound, I'm using an amp cab, a guitar amp speaker, but you can see we've got a bunch of different presets which we'll use in a couple moments. It just gives the guitar that more realistic amp sound versus not running through a mix at all. It sounds very dry and direct. But through an amp, I really love the warmth that adds, and just dialing it back a little bit lets me get the best of both worlds. I should also add something else that's adding to the size of this guitar is the wide function. Before and after. Much bigger. It's applying a phase offset to the left and right, so the distortion responds differently to each side, giving us that super wide sound. This is another instance where on the finisher, I've used ping pong delay. So I've added UFX reverb, which gives us that really big sound. Now we've got to listen to the drums before and after. This is where the modes come into play because each mode, there's a lot of them here, has their own unique characteristics. This one in particular is called octave. It adds a sub-octave before the processing. So not only are we getting that original drum signal, but it's taking those drum sounds and mixing in a lower octave version. These hi-hats go from being like normal light hi-hats to basically being almost like shakers, which I think is really cool. It's a bit of an extreme effect. Now, what happens as you start distorting things is it can get kind of muddy, which is where the filter section comes in very useful. I mentioned some of the different filter modes earlier, but the mid cut is very useful in this circumstance. Before, after. It lets me get that distorted sound, but have a little less mud. Again here, we're using an amp cab speaker, which is contributing to this overall sound, but we could be in the car. We could get that classic radio sound, or that bathroom kind of slapback sound. And if we want to accentuate a particular frequency, envelope mod down here will help us find it. On the bass, I'm using the fold back mode, plus a flanger on the finisher, which is giving us this really talky sounding bass. I'll turn the flanger off for now and dial back the mix. Before, it's just kind of like a bland, movementless bass. Start to add in more, we get that buzz from the fold back style distortion. And then we get the flanger, which really lets it talk. This is something that can really help a bass like this cut through a mix. Finally, let me show you how we can use both of these plugins for really cool sound design moments. Sticking with the synthwave track for a moment, I was able to create this really fun intro where the tape winds up and it sounds like it's coming through a radio and then everything comes in, right? That was accomplished with the tape stop function. If I press and hold, tape stops, open it back up, winds back up, comes back to life. I then use distort with the radio speaker setting, and if I turn that mix all the way up, sounds like we're coming through a radio, right? Perfectly. Then dial it back down, slowly the track comes back in. Good for breakdowns, intros, outros. Something else I had a lot of fun with was creating little glitchy sounds like at the beginning of this track. You hear those glitches and stutters? The track just originally sounded like this. Just basic. But you might have noticed this glitchy transition track, which is just a resampling of the whole track through a setting on UFX Lo-Fi. Not super musical to listen to for a long time, but for little transition moments like at the end here, it creates for a pretty cool effect. How I did that was, on the master of this track, I utilized a preset called Chopping Bones, which uses the dropouts mode, which will create random dropouts. And it sounds exactly like that stuttery sound we heard before. Not to be confused with, of course, the stutter mode, which can give us like a more of a beat repeat style stutter with reverses in there as well. But nonetheless, you could pick one of these modes that you really like, resample that audio into an audio track, and just drop out other sounds where you want this little transition effect to happen. Like, of course, there's other cool things happening there too, like automating the ring mod on the drums, or automating the drive, highlighter, and mix the bass line just at the right moment. Sometimes I'm using the filter and finisher effects to add even more character to a sound, like utilizing that reverb and ring mod for a transition on these drums. Other times, like here on these drums with distort, I'm using that mid-cut very tactically and using warm drive to just warm up the quality of these drums. And we shouldn't forget, if you are looking for inspiration, we could roll the dice and go for a little surprise. I like big surprises. Hopefully you can see from using UFX Lo-Fi and Distort across those different genres and different instruments, just how quickly they can add character, movement, and energy to any sound. Both plugins live up to that UFX philosophy of fast and inspiring sound design, whether you're warming up keys, transforming vocals, or pushing and reshaping a drum sample or a bass line. Explore the modes, try the presets, and don't forget about the filter and finisher sections. For deeper sound design and getting getting your sound mix ready. Thanks so much for watching. We can't wait to hear what you'll make with UFX Lo-Fi and Distort. My name is Taetro here with UJAM. Have a good one.